Right, I did not think I would be covering Vertigo 2 today, and the deal with this review is the review has been done for quite a while, and it should all still be relevant. I've gone back and I've tested a few levels with the new patch they've implemented into Vertigo 2 on PS5, and the one issue I have with the game is still there in the capacity in which I talk about it in this review. That's the long and short of it. The review still stands, and I didn't encounter the bug that they also talked about in testing, which is the reason why the game was delayed for so long. Also, I'm about to sound a bit different because it's been so long that I've had a microphone and setup change in terms of how I record videos. That's how long this review's been sitting there, but everything still stands in what I say. And I'm really excited to finally get my thoughts to you guys because Vertigo 2 is not only one of the best PSVR2 games we've gotten on the platform so far, it's one of the best VR games I've ever played. So, let me introduce you to Vertigo 2. Now, for two reasons, I'm not going to be intersplicing gameplay of me like I usually do in this review. We're just going to be talking and talking and talking because there is a lot to talk about in this video. However, there's a second reason for this, of course, like I just said. It's because I'm going to be doing a full playthrough of Vertigo 2 on the channel. I've played through the whole game now, I have rolled credits on it. Unless I have some issues with corruption, hopefully all of those episodes will be out over the coming week or so. And my god, was it a journey. I'm so grateful this has been brought to the platform because it's genuinely incredible and I cannot wait for all of you to experience it. But as I said, it's not flawless, it's not without a couple of issues, and I'll detail those in a second. Let's start with the visuals. The visuals overall are good. Resolution-wise, I'd compare this to Arizona Sunshine. It's not absolutely spot on, it doesn't use dynamic foveated rendering because the engine doesn't support it. It's not that the dev is lazy, the engine, Unity, I think it's built in, just it's not really possible to implement that here, so the resolution itself can be a little blurry on far objects. However, I really did not care by the time I was done with this game. You get kind of used to it, and the art direction is so stellar that you just kind of don't notice and don't care. The imagination that's gone into the art direction for this game is completely out of this world. You go from Half-Life-esque levels where you're in labs to otherworldly areas that just look absolutely unreal, and although the textures might not be up to par with AAA games, don't get me wrong, in terms of textures and resolution, this is not a AAA game. It's made originally by one person, so I'd say get your expectations in check for that. But the actual level of otherworldly imagination put into these segments and these levels and these locations, it's nuts. It's absolutely incredible, and with the art direction of each place, it just blew me away more and more as I progressed through the game. And the best thing is, in this video, most of the footage you're seeing is from the first hour of gameplay. There's a little bit of gameplay sprinkled in from later on, about 4 hours into the game, to show you a bit of variety, but I really do not want to spoil some of the really cool stuff that you're gonna see when playing through Vertigo 2. Go in as blind as possible to story spoilers and location spoilers, because that's what I did, and it absolutely blew me away at every corner in terms of the visual design. However, as I said, the resolution is not incredible, and I think that's because of the amount of stuff that's purely on screen at certain times. And this links into my next point, which is that the FPS for this game, the hertz, which, if you don't know, usually runs at 120 Hz reprojected for games on PSVR2, or 90 Hz unreprojected, or 120 unreprojected. What this means is that some games have ghosting because they're reprojected, and some games don't. Vertigo 2, for the most part, doesn't have ghosting. It is native, it feels incredibly smooth to play, and the world feels really real because of that. However, the FPS does drop in bigger scenes. Now, I'd say I ran into this maybe, I want to say 6 to 7 times, something around that. Only in big firefights or massive expanses and areas did the frames drop, but they did drop. And for people that get nauseous, you might really be turned off by that, because at times, if you're not used to VR and not used to the FPS slowing down, which it never usually does in other games, it might make you feel quite sick. But if you don't mind that, Vertigo 2 is a must-buy for me. But that is the biggest issue with this port, is the frames per second is so inconsistent at times. And it's really frustrating, because although personally I know it didn't bother me, but I know it will bother others and might put them off experiencing this incredible game. I have a feeling this is why the game was delayed, because they wanted to polish up the FPS a little bit, and I'm glad that they did that because I'm sure the state it was in before this was a lot worse. But there are still moments, especially in one of the moments you'll see in this video, which is in this massive sprawling expanse of a forest, where the frames just tank. They absolutely tank when you're outside and you're taking everything in. And although it still is enjoyable to play, you really do feel it. And yeah, if you're nauseous, you're not going to enjoy that at all, I don't think. However, let's move on from that and go back to the good stuff, because the rest of this video is talking about the good, to be honest. Starting with the world building and the story. It's weird. It's incredibly weird. You're going to see some really strange shit as you play through this game. Apologies for the language, I don't usually use that in review videos like this. I use it in my gameplay because that's how I usually speak, but this is a lot more structured, but I literally have no other way of explaining it. There's some weird ass shit in this game, but it's incredible. It doesn't feel out of place, and the writing for it is actually pretty good. Some of the voice acting, you can tell it's not a AAA game. Some of the voice acting is a little bit rough, but the writing is funny. Especially, there's a character called Nanny, who you have a few interactions with, and I absolutely love him. But yeah, the world building is just nuts. Essentially, in the game, you're going through a quantum reactor trying to reach the end to try and get home. And you go through stages of different warped realities, essentially, in different levels where different species live, different climates, and different environments are. And the world building for those is fleshed out. They allow you to make decisions in these areas, which is just so cool. You can affect the world around you. You're not just a passerby, you're not just passive, and I love that about this. It makes it a much more immersive VR game because your actions have consequences to these different places that you visit throughout your journey. So yeah, the world building is incredible. I've got to say as well, the gunplay is unreal. The animations for guns are awesome. Some of them are just jaw-droppingly satisfying, especially the shotgun you acquire in the early game. The reload animation is so good, and I say animation, it's a manual reload, so you're doing it yourself, but the gun itself is so intricate, and there's so many different moving parts that it's just so satisfying to reload. I can't really explain it, you'll experience it when you play the game, but the gunplay and the reloads are spot on here. They're the best I've ever experienced in a VR game. I can tell why this game was a Golden Joystick nominee, and is a lot of people's Game of the Year in the VR space. Another thing as well is that the enemy variety here is really, really wide. There's so much to explore in terms of enemies and how to tackle them. Each new area will present new enemies to you and new enemy types that all have to be handled differently, and different combinations of them lead you to tackle different situations very, very differently. I said differently a lot then, you get the point. The only thing I can really relate this to is if you've ever played Halo, especially Halo 1 through to 3, that game throws different combinations of grunts, elites, jackals, hunters, brutes, all sorts at you, and they all play incredibly differently in terms of the variety of attacks they have, the animations, how readable they are. It's exactly the same in Vertigo 2. Different guns are going to be better in different situations, different tactics are going to be better against different enemies, and choosing to use your environment wisely and tackling enemies in a variety of ways is really going to pay off you in this game, and it makes the combat feel so much more fun as a sandbox and satisfying to play around with, which is something that I think VR shooters lack a lot. I love a game called Crossfire on PSVR2, you've probably played it if you've been following the channel for a while, but my biggest complaint about those enemies is they run at you, they stand still, and they shoot. Vertigo is not like that. All these enemies are physics-based, meaning if you push them over, they will fall. If you shoot a body part, it will go flying backwards. There's dismemberment and gore, and they're all physics-based, and they all act differently and intelligently. It is such a breath of fresh air. You guys are going to absolutely love it if you jump in and try out the combat. There's also boss battles, which are incredibly fun. They're all very different in terms of how they look and how they play. There are boss battles from gigantic monsters you have to fight to 1v1s and sword fights. There's so much variety, just like the enemy design, and the boss fights are genuinely some of the only VR boss fights that I've done that have felt fresh. I really enjoyed the ones in Horizon Call the Mountain and Resident Evil Village, but in terms of gameplay variety and fun, I think these take the cake. So yeah, don't really have much to say about the boss battles other than you're gonna love them, they're a big spectacle when they happen, and they're a lot of fun to participate in. So, overall, Vertigo 2 is a massive success for me. I know some other reviewers probably will bring it down a few points for those FPS drops. This is my own personal opinion. It did not bother me that much, but I do really understand that it will bother some other people quite a lot. So will the resolution. Some people are expecting to jump into this and probably see Resident Evil Village levels of resolution quality. You're not going to get that. I want to make that completely clear. Maybe in future patches they can optimize the game a little bit more, but especially the build that I was playing and the build you're probably going to get at launch, it's not going to look like those AAA games. But trust me, you will forget all about that as soon as you start playing and interacting with the world. It's genuinely amazing. The interactions are so nuts with the amount of stuff you can pick up, the amount of stuff you can just push around, interact with. It's so immersive. Vertigo 2 is the real fucking deal. Honestly, it really is. And if you're looking forward to it, it retails for £25. I can now reveal that because the embargo's over, and it's worth every penny. It really is. I do have to say though, some trophies didn't trigger for me for the first maybe 3 hours of the game. It might be because I was playing too early and the trophies hadn't unlocked yet. So it's probably going to be fine for you guys, but that just happened to me. I can't confirm or deny if that was the case. That was the reasoning, but that did happen. And this version of the game does not include the level editor just yet. So you're not getting that, but you are getting the full story. And that is enough for me. This is Future Jeremy here as well. I want to mention New Game Plus. Once you've completed the entire story, you can jump back in with a bunch of mutators and modifiers like infinite health, infinite ammo, and also you can play as a bunch of the characters throughout the story, which is awesome. Adds a whole new level of replayability. I do not want to go through this review without mentioning that. It's a great feature for replay value. Honestly, Vertigo 2 is absolutely blowing me away. I'm incredibly excited to show you guys the Let's Play of it. It's going to be just like the Resi Village one if you watch that. I absolutely loved my time with this game. It lived up to the hype, and I really hyped it up in my head. So that's a high bar to clear. But thank you all for watching. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video.